Welcome all of you to our second annual Be Engaged Summit. I can't thank you enough for being here. What it tells me is we have a business community and a community in Las Vegas that understands the importance of our education system. It hasn't always been the case, and we know that we have lots of challenges as we've grown as a community. Our district's now the 5th largest school district in the country. And as they've grown, they've had more and more challenges they've had to deal with. Some of those budgetary, some of those just a growing base of students that have additional needs. And we need to make sure that we stay involved in this process. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with this group. But, you know, I always heard whenever you want somebody to remember your point, you tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them what you told them. So in the book, you saw the program. That was what we were going to tell you. Inside the beautiful Smith Center, you heard what we were telling you. I'm going to tell you what you just heard, because I want to make sure you got that message clear. It's going to take all of us working together to make sure that Clark County School District isn't just one of the largest districts in the country, but it's one of the most improving districts in the country. I think we have a commitment I know we have a commitment from the district and from the superintendent. We're going through some challenges there. We all read about it in the newspaper. But the superintendent has asked the community to be part of the solution. You heard that this morning. I'm just replaying that for you. You heard from Jonas in the LVGA group, from Bob and United Way, that the more we can do to improve the education system, the easier it will be for us to grow and diversify our economy. The less services our community citizens will need. And so this is an investment in a lot of areas. It's not just in our kids, although that should be more than enough reason, but it's an investment in our community and our business community and our families. And so really important that we follow up on what we learned today. You heard some things that we're doing on a trial basis. You saw the Square Panda learning device. That's something that as a bank, we were very impressed with when we saw the results that they were producing in their early testing, and we said, this is something we need to get here. It was great that Andre was already involved in the company, and they were already doing some work with his academy. So we looked at how can we get this in the Clark County School District system. Andy worked with us. They were kind enough to donate their tablets and their teacher training so we can get some exposure to the program. And to the learning device, and our bank partnered with them in donating the iPads so we could get those into those 2 schools that you heard about. Last year, for those of you that were here, you heard about the STEM Academy, and you saw the donation, the generous donation that Alan and Russ and their team made to the state of Nevada. And it is the entire state. They're working with Clark County School District and Washoe County School District. This is, as you heard, very critical to helping our middle school students understand the importance of the job opportunities that exist here and why they need to get that STEM training in the classroom if they want to pursue these great opportunities that they're learning about in 5th, 6th, and 7th grade. So without the STEM Academy support, they wouldn't be here. We've worked, and I know Russ has worked with several other business partners in this community. I know our bank has worked very closely with him in making sure he met as many different companies and many different industries as possible. We have a representative from our northern group, Mike Hicks, who's been involved with Russ up in northern Nevada, helping him with some introductions to Tesla and other groups up there. That's how important we see this STEM training. If you look at the governor's Office on Economic Development, our development plan for a state has identified industries where job needs for those industries require a heavy emphasis in STEM education. So the only way we're going to be able to grow those industries is if we grow our talent here, starting in the school system. So that was another reason for the focus on the STEM program today. And then finally, you heard Glenn and others talk about the importance of the district moving to this empowerment model. And for all of us in the business community, we know that when you centralize decision making, you take those decisions out of the hands of the people that are directly serving your customers, and you're putting them in a backline or back office function, sometimes 2 and 3 steps removed from your customer, and you don't make as good a decisions in those cases because you're not hearing firsthand what the customer's saying about what it is that we're delivering to them. So we're I know the business community is a big believer in moving those decisions out to the schools, in our world, out to the line, and having them be directly engaged with the students and the parents in delivering the services that the students and parents expect. As a business community, you heard how important that is that we get this right. So if you've ever, and I know many of you in this audience have been through this before, if you've been through a merger or an acquisition, you go through an organizational restructure, that's challenging enough. Then you go through a cultural change, and that becomes even more challenging. The district's facing both of those at the same time in a massive way, 40,000 plus employees. So they're going to need our help there, and that's what Pat talked about this morning is, and you heard Jeremy talk about the work that's being done in preparing the leadership at the district and providing them this resource in the business community. So you got the URL off the screen, hopefully. If you didn't, we're going to be sending, hopefully we got all your business cards so you were in the drawing. We're going to be sending you some information. We're going to send you a recap of where you can watch this program. Vegas PBS, 2 years in a row, have recorded it for us, and we'll provide you their link if you want to forward it on to anyone. We're also going to send you an electronic version of the booklet that was put together last year, identifying those many wonderful nonprofit organizations that are here supporting the public education system, the K through 12 system. And I'd like to at this time recognize the directors of those organizations. If you just raise your hand. Thank you all for being here. You were, yeah, a round of applause. These are people that do incredible work in support of our kids in the school system. I want to recognize a couple other groups, and then I'm going to bring up our speaker. So I wanted to make sure we told you what we were going to tell you, we told you, and then I told you what we just told you. So did that make sense? Hopefully it did. We had a lot of people that worked together tirelessly on putting this program on for you today. It's all volunteer work. And I would like to ask the committee members for the Be Engaged Committee to please stand. Unbelievable effort on the part of a relatively small group of people trying to pull together a lot of information so that we can all understand what some of the challenges are and what we can do to help meet those challenges. We had some great sponsors. I'm not going to go through them again, but Kristen covered the sponsors. You saw their names up on the board today. Without the corporate sponsors underwriting the cost of this program, we wouldn't be able to put it on. And without the title sponsors and the co-sponsors, we wouldn't have the group of talented people we have here hearing this message, which was the most important thing, is to make sure the right people heard this message and got involved in this process. So again, I'd like to thank all of the sponsors and the committee members. We had some great speakers today. I don't know how you guys felt, but I was, I hadn't had a chance to hear any of the speeches. I'd seen some of the PowerPoint presentations and videos, but I was really blown away by the quality of the topics and the depth that we went into so that the audience could understand. So could I ask the speakers if you'd just raise their hands, those that spoke on the program today? Thank you, guys. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce today's luncheon speaker, Jamie Cassett. He's a Chief Education Evangelist for Google Inc., which I think is one of the coolest titles I've ever heard. Jamie was part of the original team that launched Google Apps for universities and K-12 classrooms. He brings awareness to the power and potential of the web, technology, and Google tools to create powerful learning models. Born and raised as a first-generation American to a single mother on welfare in Hell's Kitchen, New York, Jamie fully understands the power that education has on changing the destiny of a family in just one generation. Please help me in welcoming Chief Education Evangelist Jamie Cassett.
All right, I'm just going to use this mic instead of picking up the other one. That way it's already up and running. Thank you guys very much for having me. Good afternoon. So this is cool. I've never done an outdoor presentation like this before in my sunglasses. I feel like this would be like a rap concert. We should just start all dancing. It's Vegas, right? Thank you guys very much for having me. I have slides up here, but don't worry about them. They're just mostly pictures. I will point to one of the slides if I think you can have to take a look at it. But I've been at Google for 11 years. I just celebrated my 11th year at Google. I'm part of the team that launched Google Apps for Education to the university space. launched Google Apps in the K-12, and then we launched Chromebooks in education. So my job is to work with all the different teams at Google that are working on education. And so we care a lot about education. And I always like to start with this idea of the importance of education. Why do we care about education? What makes you guys come to events like this? Spend a day. All of you are really busy. What makes you come to events where you want to focus on education? And it's because we understand that education disrupts poverty. We understand that education is what changes a family's destiny. Education is what changes our communities. And so we focus on education. For me, as John mentioned, it's a personal passion. I grew up in Hell's Kitchen, New York. Any New Yorkers in the room? You're usually louder than that. I usually hear, ah! There, that's better. But I grew up in Hell's Kitchen from the 70s and 80s, not the one that you go find today with all the nice restaurants and bars. I'm talking about the Hell's Kitchen, why it was called Hell's Kitchen, right? Back in the 70s and 80s. Not the nicest place to grow up. My mother showed up to New York from Argentina, escaping poverty, escaping government oppression. I was born and raised in Hell's Kitchen, showed up at PS 111, which you can kind of see on the screen there. And they said, welcome to PS 111. And I said, ¿qué? So I had to learn English. That was my first task. But I grew up with a single mother on welfare and food stamps. And education is the reason why I get to do what I do today. Education was the most important thing you can focus on. So I buckled down, graduated from high school, went to college, went to graduate school. And this is why I get to stand here in front of you, because of education. That's why we care so much about education. I have had some milestones. I'm definitely adding this to a milestone in terms of doing presentations. I had another one last year when the First Lady of the United States asked me to come speak at the White House to talk to 200 kids about the importance of higher education as part of her Reach Higher, Michelle Obama's Reach Higher initiative. And so she invited me to come speak to 200 kids about why they should focus on education, why they should focus on getting their high school degrees, but also going to college and getting their college degrees. And these are 200 kids that were growing up or are growing up the way I grew up. And I said, let me check my calendar. No, you just show up, right? You go. But I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I didn't know where this was going to be, just like I forgot that we were doing this outside. You know, you don't think about the venue. And then I got there, and I was escorted into the east wing of the White House. And for those of you who haven't been in the east wing of the White House, there's this surreal thing that happens. There's a train going by. This is awesome. You guys can hear me. For those of you who haven't been in the east wing of the White House, there's this surreal thing that happens when you walk in and you feel like you're in 1800, right? You're walking through the hallways and you see the presidential portraits and you see the Kennedy portrait, you know, the one where he's looking down, and you say to the person who's guiding you, hey, look, it's the Kennedy portrait. Like they hadn't seen it before. That was the first time. But you go through this experience, you go through the red room, the blue room, the green room, and you wait in the green room because this event was taking place in the east room of the White House. And you stand in the doorway waiting to be introduced into the east room of the White House, and you're looking out of the window and you're inside the White House. And you look down at the hardwood floor and you think about all the people that are stood in that spot. And you're like, oh my God, this hoodlum from New York is just standing on the same spot, about to be introduced into the east room of the White House. And this is one picture I hope you can see. This is me in the White House, speaking in the east room of the White House. And for those of you who can see this picture, doesn't it look like one of those pictures you get at the state fair where they green screen you in? When this happened and I would show this picture to my friends, they weren't impressed that I spoke in the east room of the White House. They were impressed that I owned a suit. That was but it's one suit. I have one suit. I wear it wherever I need to wear it. That's one suit. But I got up there, I walked up there, and I'm standing up there, and I feel like I'm inside the television set. And I think about the fact that that is the American ethos, right? You work hard, you get your education, and you can speak in the east room of the White House. That's why we all care about education so much. But here's the thing we have to think about. If you're an educator, if you're involved in education, the impact that you have goes beyond the students that you face in your classroom or in your programs or in your after-school program, that the impact that you have goes on for generations and generations and generations. That you're going to have an impact on kids that you will never meet in your entire life. Because now I have my kids, and this is them. Don't awe them, you don't know them. I have a 24-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 2-year-old. Yeah, some of you are realizing I can only handle one child at a time. I like it that way. But my 24-year-old is living in New York City right now, and she graduated from college a year and a half ago, and we never talked about college. We never had a conversation about her going to college. She just assumed she was going to college because I went to college and her mother went to college. She assumed she was going to graduate school because I went to graduate school, and her mother's a teacher and she went to graduate school. She assumed I was going to pay for it, but you know, that was a problem that we solved pretty quickly. My 15-year-old is talking about what his post-secondary education is going to be. There's a lot of trains that go through here. My 15-year-old is talking about what his post-secondary education is going to look like. He's not talking about whether he's going to go to college or not. They just assume they're going to college. That's the impact that we have on students. And if that's true, and it's that important, then we should probably take education very seriously. And we have to recognize that we don't live in this world anymore. We live in a different world. Now, I'm not one of those education reformers that talks about how bad education is, or how broken education is, or how terrible teachers are. Well, there's a lot of reasons, but one is I'm living proof that education works, and there's millions of people that I meet that are just like me, that it worked for them as well. You have to also understand the history of education and realize that the graduation rate in this country in 1910 was 8%. The content that we teach kids today is so much stronger than it was even 40 years ago, that so strong that most parents, including those here in this room, you won't admit when you stopped helping your kids with their homework because it got too hard for you. It was 4th grade for me. Once my kids were done with 4th grade, you're on your own. So it's not that education is broken. We built a superpower of a nation on the back of the education system that we built in this country, all the way from the first public schools that we opened up in the Boston area through the GI Bill and everything else that we've done in this country in terms of education. We've done some amazing things. What I think we need to do isn't fix education. It's to recognize that we don't live in this world anymore. That we don't live in a world where you can hire 400 people to sit in an office and run through machines or answer phones or do those types of things that we used to do 100 years ago. What we need to do is recognize that what we need to do is bring education to the next level. That we need to take the best of what good education is and bring it to the next level and ask ourselves, what should we be doing to prepare our kids for this future? Because at the end of the day, that's what we have to do in education, is prepare kids for the future. But here's the thing we have to recognize, that the future is already here. You hear often, maybe you heard it this morning, somebody will say, we have to help kids build 21st century skills, right? You hear that, if you're in education, you hear that like daily. Well, one, we're 17 years into the 21st century. We are in the 21st century. We have kids who are in school today who are going to be around in the 22nd century. And second, the future has already arrived. And a lot of that future has to do with computer science. Computer science is something that you will find in every industry, in every state, across the board. No matter what you do, computer science has elements in it. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts there will be 1 million computer science jobs available in the next 8 to 10 years. And I think that number is soft. And that's just for computer programmers. That doesn't include everything else that's related to computer science that has to go into it. Not just programmers. And this is an economic issue as well. The average computer science graduate makes 40% more than the average college graduate makes. What happens to our communities if all of a sudden kids are doubling their salaries? Or if we have kids making more money than we ever dreamed possible. And here in Nevada, I wrote these stats down for you guys. The average computer science graduate in Nevada makes $77,846 a year, compared to the average salary of $42,800. What happens if all of a sudden we're preparing kids for that future? And when we talk about computer science, and I do this across the country when I talk in different states, we don't have to wait 20 years to see the future. It's already here. Today, in Nevada, not 20 years from now, today, there are 2,609 open computer science jobs available in this state. Open today. And that, by the way, that's 4 times the demand of jobs in other industries. In 2014, only 96 computer science graduates came out of this state. And 23% of them were female. In 2015, only 104 high school students took the AP exam. And 21% of them were female. Only 9 schools in Nevada offers the AP computer science course. That's 9% of all the schools that offer AP programs. Right? So we have to recognize that the future has a lot to do with computer science, and we're not catching up to that. So to me, it's not that education is broken, it's just that we have to recognize where we're headed and how do we adapt to that future. Now, the role of technology in education is important, but we have to recognize that we've been talking about technology in education for a long time. We've been talking about technology for a long time. If you can see this picture, for those of us who get on airplanes, you know how you have to hide, keeping your airplane off of airplane mode, and you play that cat and mouse game with the flight attendants? We've been putting computers on airplanes forever. This picture here is a picture of a hard drive. And if you're a business in 1956, you can lease this hard drive for $3,200 a month. And it's a 5 megabyte hard drive. We've been talking about technology. We've had technology around us for a long time, and in education, it's been no different. In 1900, motion pictures were going to revolutionize education. In the 1950s, television was going to fix education. So I got stuck there. And we've been talking about computers in education since the 60s. I took a computer class when I was in 9th grade, and I learned how to program because I was told that computers are going to be important to my future. And I took a programming class. And the old people in the room like me will remember this. I learned how to program in BASIC. And I wrote 5,000 lines of code on a Commodore 64 to make a bird fly across the screen. You guys remember that? It didn't even look like a bird. It was just a squiggly line that just went across the screen. So we've been talking about technology and computers and education forever. Why is it different this time? Well, a couple of things are happening. First is the recognition that we know what good education looks like. We know how to make it relevant and engaging and personal. We've known these things for years now. We just haven't been able to implement it because technology hasn't been able to do that. Technology is finally at the point where we can take advantage of technology to bring education to the next level. We don't even have to invent anything new. We don't even have to think about anything new. We could just look at the best research of what good education looks like and ask ourselves, how do we bring these things to life using technology? How do we make technology work for us so that we can make education relevant and engaging and personal? So that's first, all the great research that we have on what good learning looks like. Second is, unlike when I took that computer class when I was in 9th grade and I had never seen a computer, technology's wrapped itself around the core of everything that we do, and we don't even recognize it anymore. For example, how many of you have not used technology today? How many of you have not used the web today? So far, my favorite answer is somebody shouting out, "Not me, I just checked my email," but that's it. How long did it take us to get to this point? The iPhone is going to be 10 years old this summer. The BlackBerry, God forbid you have a BlackBerry, you either embarrassed to pull that out of your pocket or you're one of those gung-ho, like, I'm going to die with the BlackBerry in my hand. That's 13 years old. Do you remember we used to have to call the internet with our home phones? And the internet was busy? And you were okay with that. That was perfectly fine to you. And what was your reward when you finally got on? It was a bunch of web pages with words to links to other web pages that had words. And you were excited about this. And every once in a while, someone would post a picture and you'd lose your mind. Like, there's a picture coming, and it would go back and forth like this. There's going to be a picture on my computer screen in about half an hour. Hang out. And what's your expectation with technology today? I've seen teachers, to me, I just wrote a blog post on teachers as a workforce, the most dedicated, the most passionate workforce in any industry, and I've worked across many different industries. And I've seen teachers, the most patient, the most understanding people in the world, turn into a mob at conferences when the Wi-Fi is too slow. They lose their minds when it doesn't work. You guys are the same way. I expect to be working. I have to go to Atlanta tonight, and I expect to be working at full capacity while I'm traveling through space. Our expectations of technology have changed. We don't even recognize it anymore. And if that's true for us, the generation that was minding our own business when this thing called the internet showed up, what does that mean for a generation of kids who don't know any better? A generation of kids who don't know that the world existed before Google. A generation of kids who don't know that the world existed before smartphones and tablets and laptops. A generation of kids who don't know that the world existed before Wi-Fi. Tell a 10-year-old kid that you're going to go stay in a place that doesn't have Wi-Fi, and they're like, what? What? Are we going camping? Where are we going? I don't get it. Now, it's important to point out that I'm not saying that this generation, because they're born with technology, are somehow different than we are, that somehow they're made different. I would be careful of anyone who comes up here and says, this generation is wired different, they think about things in a different way, or they can multitask and do 3 things at the same time. They can't. They do 3 things at the same time poorly, just like you do 3 things at the same time poorly. We don't have to be afraid of them. They're not superhuman. They're just like us. But how they think about learning is different than the way we think about learning because of the way we were taught. And we have to remind ourselves of that every day. This is a picture, if you can see it, it's my 15-year-old, but when he was 13, and he's showing me his lines of code. He had spent the last 6 months learning how to program, learning how to code. He didn't ask me, where can I learn how to code? What classes should I take? I work at Google, and he didn't ask me where he should learn how to code. He just started learning how to code. We waited for people to teach us. We waited to go take a class. This generation just has it at their fingertips. How do we take advantage of that? Because the future that we're preparing these kids for is so much different than the future that we are preparing for, and we have to think about the skills that this generation of kids are going to need. Now, I'm going to show you a slide, and you don't have to read it because I'll tell you what's on it, but I'm going to show you a slide. We asked employers, just like yourselves, all over the world, what are the skills that you need from your employees? What are the skills that are the most relevant, most important for you to run your business? And we asked employers all over the world. And the list that I'm going to show you, the most fascinating thing about this list is that it's not fascinating at all. It's the same list that we've been looking at for a long time. So on this list, the top 5 things that if you can't see it, the top 5 things on that list are problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, communication, right? Isn't that what you're all looking for from your employees? The problem is that we've been looking at this list for so long, we think we know what questions we should ask. We think we know what skills we should be building to help kids develop these skills. And the problem is that some of the times we get that wrong. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. The first one is around problem solving. And instead of getting to problem solving, what we do is we ask kids what they want to be when they grow up. All of you are guilty of that. I'm guilty of it in the past. Where you look at a kid and you say, what do you want to be when you grow up? We were all asked that question. We think that's the question we should ask kids. The problem is the data will show you that most of the jobs don't exist, the ones that they're going to be working in. I'm working for a company and in a job that didn't exist when I graduated from graduate school, let alone high school. And second of all, they don't know. So instead of asking a kid what you want to be when you grow up, I think what we should be asking them is what problem you want to solve. What problem spins in your head? What are the things that you think are the most important elements of that problem? Because the most important question is the second question, which is, what do you need to learn to solve that problem? What are the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities that you need to develop to solve that problem? How can you start taking classes online, offline? What books are out there? What blogs are out there? What newsletters are out there? And what videos and documentaries and so on? Who's solving this problem now? Who can you connect with on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter that's solving that problem? It doesn't have to be a global problem. It could be how to make ATMs better, how to make better banking regulations. It could be how to make blenders quieter, which is, you think, a problem that we would have been able to solve by now, but for some reason all right, sorry, that's a personal problem. I got a dog that goes crazy every time you put the blender. Anyway, so asking a kid what problem you want to solve gets us closer to what Daniel Pink talks about in his book Drive, if you ever read that book about motivation, what motivates all of us as human beings. Purpose, autonomy, and mastery. That's what motivates all of us. Asking them what problem you want to solve gets us closer to that. This picture, if you can't see it, there's a girl there in the middle who's holding a trophy. She was not your typical science winner. These are winners from our Google Science Fair. And she had a problem that she wanted to solve. Wasn't your typical science fair participant. She had a friend who lived in the Philippines, and she was upset that her friend couldn't read or do her homework at night. So she went and invented a flashlight that's powered by the heat of the human hand. And she's 15 years old. And I can give you 10 examples of 15 to 17-year-old kids who are doing the same thing. I don't know why we think we have to be 30 before we start inventing things. That's not how the world was built. How do we open up that problem-solving world for kids so that we get the problem-solving skills that we want? That's one. Two is collaboration. We talk about collaboration in education all the time, but we don't mean it. Education is currently set up as a single-player sport. It's my kid who's responsible for his grades, his tests, his assignments, and then we push him out the door and we say, good luck, go work with others. Imagine in a classroom, a typical 9th grade classroom, kids are taking a test. And at the end of the test, 2 kids come up to the teacher holding that test together, saying, we decided to combine our skill set and work on this together. What would the reaction be? Why are we teaching kids that collaborating is cheating when that's what we need in our schools? Now, flip that into my world or your world, and I go to Sundar, who's the CEO at Google, and I go, here's the education plan. I did it all by myself. I'm sorry, did I work with anybody on the team? No, they don't even know I did this. How long would I survive in my job? How long would you survive in your job? We have to really build collaboration into our systems. Real collaboration is the ability to listen, to ask good questions, the ability to influence and build consensus. How do we make sure, how are we helping our principals and our schools determine those real collaboration skills that they need? And then the other examples about literacy, and what I believe is what we need more than anything are strong digital leaders. Right? We can't assume that just because kids are born with technology that they just know how to use technology, because the data will show you that they don't. How do we make sure we're building strong digital leaders so that they know how to vet, know how to make sense of information, know how to be safe online, how to be private online, how to know whether something's real or not? Stanford did a study that I'm diving into right now, and the results are scary. 82% of elementary school kids cannot tell you the difference between a sponsored site and a real news site. 82%. So that means all of you are going to have 21-year-olds who are going to be working for you, and you're going to ask them to put together research or information or data or something for a presentation, and you're not going to know whether what they used is real or not. So how do we make sure we're building strong digital leaders in our school system? Because if they're not learning how to do this in school, where are they going to learn how to do this? So we want to make sure we're focused on that. And so what I think we need more than anything is a culture shift, right? We need a culture shift, not just education, but all of us, to think about education in terms of iteration and innovation, that we're constantly iterating, constantly changing things, that we're constantly doing things. And the good news is that we're starting to see this happen all over the place. But what we need to do is start asking new questions in education and stop getting into debates about old traditional education versus new education, online versus offline, and realize that it all works together. One of the debates I get into all the time is, should we have kids memorize things or not memorize things? The answer is both. I have a 2-year-old. Every night in the bathtub when I'm home, I pull out those letters that stick to the side of the bathtub when they get wet, and I pull out the A, and I go, what's this? And she goes, A, and I beam with pride at her genius. And then I pull out the B, and I go, what's this? And she goes, A. I'm like, okay, we need to work on that. I want my kid to memorize letters and numbers and facts and figures and lots of different things. But at some point, what we have to realize is that information is a commodity. It has no value on its own. That what we need to do is help kids take that information and convert it to real intelligence. And so we want to make sure we're focused on that. The good news is that we're starting to see this in schools all over the country, all over the world. We're seeing these collaborative learning models where kids are working together and building things together, where technology is there to support and enable what they do. And that they're using these tools to support the problems that they're interested in solving. But at the end of the day, and this is why we gather at events like this, is that schools can't do it alone. The whole community working together to do this. And what we need to do is support teachers and principals in this path of iteration and innovation. That at the end of the day, we have to recognize that when that door closes in that classroom, nothing is more important than having a great teacher in that classroom, especially for kids who are growing up the way I grew up. That sometimes the most important adult is that teacher. And what we need to do is support the teachers and give them the professional development that they need, but we can't ignore the principals. And to be honest with you, sometimes we ignore the principals. We talk about superintendents and the skills that they need, and then we talk about teachers and the skills that they need, but we don't spend a lot of time talking about principals. So you guys, this is a pretty innovative program that you have here focused on principals. There's not a lot of these in the country. So you guys are creating a model of what this can look like across the country. Because that's where the change happens, is at the principal level. What we need to do is move away from the traditional way that we think about classrooms because of the way we grew up in these classrooms and we think they need to be like this, to implementing iteration and innovation into our classrooms so that they look more like this. So kids are working together and building things together. Because at the end of the day, there is no future classroom. There is no future model of what a class will look like. The future classroom starts on Monday, and then Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and then Thursday, and it's every day. I'll give you a Google example of what this looks like, but you could use any example from any company that's sitting here today. If you can see it, this is the original Google.com. This is where it started. This is Larry and Sergey putting a bunch of machines together and doing distributive computing from a different point of view. And then this is what Google looks like today. It's just a row of servers, of the gazillions of servers that we have all over the world. And I want to point out 3 things with these 2 slides. The first is that, and especially for communities that are rural communities or communities that don't think that they are in big cities, you have to picture this Google and the 4 computers that are working together. You can picture those computers anywhere in the world. There's no reason why they needed to be at Stanford. It's just 4 computers working together. That's 1. 2 is that this is not what Google looked like on Monday, and then this is what it looked like on Friday. This took 18 years of what we're talking about. 18 years of problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, all the things that we're talking about here. This is not going to happen overnight. So our expectations have to be tamed a little bit to make sure that we understand that this is a long-term game here. That we're implementing this, and 20 years from now, we'll see results. It's this constant iteration. And then the third thing is that this is not what a data center will look like 20 years from today. There is no future data center. There's just the next light bulb, the next cable, the next casing, the next air filter, the next chipboard. the next software update, the next hardware update, constant iteration. And that's what we need in our school systems, just like that's what we need in our businesses. Constant and consistent change and innovation. Now, here's the good news. We are just getting started. We're at the very beginning of this. To me, this is the most exciting time in education. In 1995, 1% of the world was online. And if you think about how technology has wrapped itself around the core of everything that we do, 1995 was not that long ago. 1% of the world. It took 10 years to get to the first billion people, 5 years to get to the second billion, and 4 years to get to the third billion. And yet 20 years later, only 40% of the world is online. We're at the very beginning of this. We're at the cutting edge of this. Technology is finally at the point where it's useful enough where we can implement it and use it, and it's out of the way, and it's inexpensive, and all the other things that we can do with it. We're at the very beginning of this. And the second point is that this is all doable. This is a school that I'm part of in Phoenix called the Phoenix Coding Academy. This is not a Google school. It's not a private school. It's not a charter school. This is a regular high school as part of the Phoenix Union School District where we're implementing these principles. It's an idea that I pitched to the superintendent 3 years ago. And by the way, I'm the principal's executive coach. And we're implementing all the ideas that we talked about here. This is a computer science school, but it's not a computer science school. Because kids are going to take computer science as part of their everyday classes. So they're taking biology with computer science, and history with computer science, and art with computer science. And what did this? What was the model that we used? It's easy. We hired 9 teachers and a principal 9 months before the school started, and we said to them, you're going to teach biology and computer science at the same time. Here's a blank sheet of paper. Good luck. And we supported them. We gave them the autonomy to do that. And so the reaction has been great. The community has been great. We have mentors from the business community. We have people from the tech community coming in and doing classes with these kids. And the kids are driving all this learning. So this is a regular high school inside Phoenix Union. So all the things that we're talking about today are doable and possible. We just have to have the courage to go do it. And so I want to leave you with this closing thought. I want you to think about a 5-year-old. Or my 2-year-old, or whatever little kid you have pictured, grandkid, your kid, little tiny 5-year-old. And then I want you to think about whatever technology it is that you have when I ask you how many of you haven't used technology today. Whether it's your MacBook with the touch, your iPad extra large, your giant iPad. I'm going to the Grand Canyon next month, and I can't wait to be walking around and seeing people like this. I'm going to kick them right off. Anyway, whatever technology, your new iPhone, your new red, anyone buy the new red iPhone yet? Whatever it is that you have. For me, it's this Google Pixel phone, right? This is the Google version of the iPhone. This is Google's version of what a smartphone should look like. This thing is a couple months old, created by one of the most fascinating and innovative companies in the world. And then I want you to think about that 5-year-old and look at this technology, this latest and greatest technology from Google, and realize that this is the worst technology that 5-year-old will ever see in their life. This is their Commodore 64. In 20 years, they're going to be shopping in a thrift store, and they're going to find boxes of these devices in the back of the store. And she's going to want to buy it. She's going to be like, oh, I have to have this. Because she's going to want to put it on her shelf like a museum piece, the way some of you have old technology sitting on your shelves like museum pieces. And she's going to remember. She's going to be like, my dad had one of these. And she's going to be saying to her younger siblings or people that she's shopping with, she's going to say, you guys, you're not going to believe this. But there's the port. I'm telling you this is true. There's video of this. My dad used to have a cord that came out of this thing. No, I'm serious. It was like a 3-foot cord. He would have to plug it into the wall to charge it. And the other kids would be like, what? What are you talking, like quickly, like just plug it in, charge it, and then be on their way? Like the olden days? No, for hours he had this thing plugged into the wall. Those are the 5-year-olds who are coming into our school system. Those are the 5-year-olds who are going to be facing challenges that we haven't even begun to discuss. How do we make sure that we have the right models in place, that we have the right processes in place? How do we make sure that our teachers and principals are being supported for this generation of kids, this cloud generation who's coming into our school system and are going to be looking at the world from a different point of view, a different perspective? That's our job, to focus on that so that we can help them as they grow through the K-12 system. We can help them develop the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities that they're going to need to solve the problems that drive them. That's what we have to focus on. That's why this program is so important. And I thank you guys very much for having me. Thank you.